So the next thing we're going to want to talk about, Peter, is the zoning and general plan. And I just know from my own experience, I'll go into a city, and sometimes it's even online on a website. I can find out specific zoning for a project, and the initial things that come to my mind are like, what's the density, how many units per acre, what's the lot sizes, some setbacks, that being side yard or front yard setbacks, and height is a big one. But what else comes to mind that when you think about what's in the zoning,
Sure.
for a particular parcel or a zoning designation? Give an example of like what a zoning designation might be.
Right. No, so John, and I know, as you've talked about before, the general plan provides the overall vision for the city and includes has their own land use designations. So the general plan will designate residential, commercial, and then within the residential and the commercial, they'll have some kind of subcategories of designations. The zoning does the same thing. So you'll have a residential zoning, and it will have a list of permitted uses. So oftentimes in the zoning code, you'll find a large table that will show you what the permitted uses are, what uses are permitted with a conditional use permit, what uses are maybe not even permitted. The zoning code might expressly prohibit certain types of uses. So within your looking at the framework of a piece of property, of what governs a piece of property, you look at what your uses are permitted and whether you fit into the right category or not. And then within the zoning code, you'll look at the other development standards. So as you mentioned, height, setbacks, required parking. There's a whole long list of different development standards that will affect actually how you build it. And if I can just give you a quick example of an interesting example between a general plan and a zoning code. I'm actually doing an entitlement right now where the general plan designation has some language in it that talks about lot sizes. So what's interesting is the general plan is supposed to be this large policy document. It talks about, hey, it's a low density residential designation, but in the general plan description, it talks about different lot sizes. Well, when you go to the zoning, the corresponding zoning district, it conflicts with those lot sizes. So now we have a potential, and actually I'm going to have to process a general plan amendment. I'm going to have to change the language and how it applies to the project to get rid of those lot sizes. It's one of those unique cities where they've now kind of intermixed development standards into a general plan designation. And it's something to really pay attention to, because you have an obligation to be consistent with your general plan, and you have an obligation under state law that your zoning is consistent with your general plan designation. So you have this what we call a vertical consistency, and everything has to match. And if you find these little policies, and sometimes cities will do this to you, you're going to have to take care of it and somewhat clean it up in your entitlement process.
So I know I've had this experience before, and I'm sure you have as well, but a lot of times you'll have a parcel and the general plan designation might be 5 units per acre, so kind of what you're looking to develop. But then what you'll have is the actual zoning has never been brought into conformance with the general plan. It could be agricultural zoning and 1 unit per 20 acres. And I think in the most part that you're saying the obligation of the city to bring the zoning into conformance with the general plan. And I believe when you submit your package, it's just a matter in your submittal package, you'd also have a zone change as well?
Sure. Yeah, and under state law, again, you have to have that vertical consistency. So the zoning code has to be consistent with the general plan. And as you said, John, oftentimes they're not. For whatever reason, the city is slow in getting their documents updated. You come along a piece of property, oftentimes that zone change action, that entitlement, will fall under your responsibility. Now, the nice thing is, if you have the correct general plan designation and all you're doing is changing your zoning to be consistent with the general plan, you can kind of leverage that to say, hey, city, you really should have done this yourself. We're not asking for anything special here. But yes, it does have to get cleaned up in the entitlements.
So maybe just to touch briefly on the general plan, that's the city prepares a general plan, and then they usually do updates?
Right, they're required every 5 years to update their general plan. And so again, it's a policy document. It has elements that deal with not only just land use, but housing and open space and traffic. So there's a circulation element, and it establishes goals and policies. and again, it can have in there some kickers that you have to watch out for. I mean, just another quick example, we had a project where the city had a level of service requirement in their general plan for traffic. And the roadway was currently not meeting that level of service designation. And so we really already had a general plan inconsistency to begin with. And if we were going to add more trips, we were going to further that general plan inconsistency. And there's no way the city could approve that project if it's inconsistent with the general plan. So you've got to look deep into all these different elements and make sure there aren't any of those policies or actually kind of what become development standards that you can get tripped up on.
Okay.